don't like your attitude on today of all days, Joey Richards, because today is actually your birthday. Round of applause. Thanks, Zach, for being born today. We appreciate all of your insight. Had you not been bored, we'd all be relegated to just Joey and myself. Round of applause. Big test on whether Joey.
Zach's pushing his own air horns on his birthday. Who is this guy?
Yeah. That's my birthday present. One free interruption using an air horn. That's all I wanted.
Well, it's better than muting yourself. That's for dang sure. Hopefully you guys are doing well this fine Monday evening. I've got a thunderstorm passing directly over me. So if the lights go out and I disappear, you know what happened to me. I was smited down from God himself. But on this glorious day, I do want to recognize that we are also in mourning as we received word today that Caden Sterns was being waived. It looks like no trade went through at the end of it. So friend of the program, Caden Sterns, we wish you all of the luck in your future endeavors. Guys, I was kind of blown away by this news this morning. First, disheartened, shocked, and sad about it. But as the day has continued to progress, I'm still quite shocked and I guess confused about the decision here. You had a prime starting duo there of PJ Locke and Caden Sterns, which was reminiscent to me of the Kareem Jackson and Justin Simmons pairing. So that begs a question of, do you think that this shows a propensity for the Denver Broncos having trust in the depth of their roster at safety? And how do you feel about this news? Zach, I'm going to send it over to you because I'm confused.
Yeah, I mean, for starters, it's a bummer. I think that's where I definitely want to start. Caden Sterns came on the show, was an amazing guest, was incredibly gracious with his time, incredibly friendly, and then just a talented player too. I think there's no doubt about how talented he was when he was healthy. We said it on our safety preview show a week or two ago, that if this guy's 100%, he's the best safety on the Broncos probably. I think, and thank you everybody for the birthday wishes. I don't think he, I don't think the patellar tendon is just such a serious injury, and it's a rare enough one that I don't think it's in the front of like every NFL fan's minds, but it's rough. Like, it is a very serious one. I think it's a career-changing injury. That said, we have seen players come back from it a little more frequently in recent years. And I was thinking about Drew Brees, with this as someone who's rooting for Caden Sterns. I was thinking about Drew Brees, didn't sign with the Dolphins famously because the Dolphins doctors thought this guy was done. He's just, there's no chance it's not going to happen anymore. And no one thinks about Chargers Drew Brees. They think about Saints Drew Brees. And he only went there because the Dolphins passed him up. I think Caden Sterns has the talent to maybe not be Drew Brees, but the talent to have people go, yeah, did you know that guy was with the Broncos one time? He's just an amazing player. That sucks. I think it comes down to how devastating that injury was and what the Broncos doctors thought of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I agree. Like, dude, just last year, guys, here on this podcast, we talked about Caden Sterns being a building block for this team. And that's the unfortunate part here. Of course, we talked to him on this podcast. I don't care what you say. If you come on this podcast and you're cool, you're going to, I'm a little biased towards you. I like you a little more. So it makes me a little sad seeing Caden go. Absolutely. Definitely. Bree, to your question, I don't think it necessarily means the Broncos are happy or like super confident in their depth at safety. I don't think that's the case, if I'm being honest. I think this had a lot had to do with the injury more than it had to do with, hey, we really like this talent coming up, so we're okay getting rid of Caden Sterns because, like Zach mentioned earlier, if Caden was healthy, he's probably a healthy Caden Sterns is the most talented safety in this group. So you're not telling me these other guys are more talented than him. You're not telling me Key is. You're not telling me JL Skinner is. Like these guys don't equate to what Caden Sterns showed as a rookie in my mind. They haven't shown that yet. So, yeah, I disagree there. And the safety position now is definitely a concern for me. Good news, though, on the other side is I need everyone to take a chill pill because I don't think the Broncos are going into the season being like, we have to make the playoffs. I don't think that's necessarily the thing. Of course, they would like to get there, and that's something they have to do. But I think you would see different type moves if this was a playoffs or bust type roster. I don't see it that way.
Sure. And I think that this also begs the question on whether or not the Broncos were silly or misguided in now releasing a Justin Simmons. That opens the floor for the conversation of whether or not he would still be anticipated to sign somewhere that's not a contender here in the league. But as I know it, I think that there's a couple of teams that are in the front running there for a Justin Simmons. Guys, if it's not Simmons returning to Denver, in which he would have to chicken fight another member on this roster for his jersey back, Zach, what kind of free agents are the Denver Broncos looking to pick up in general?
First, really quick, if there was any fight for the roster, that would be ridiculous. Chris Abrams better just be like, "Here you go, man. I'll take a 59 or whatever ugly numbers left."
107.
Yeah. And I don't think you're wrong in saying that, Bree. But my goodness, KAD, look in a mirror. Who will they go with otherwise? I think it's going to be the guys on the roster, and I think that's really concerning. I mean, DTY being thrust into the starting lineup was certainly a factor in the Broncos allowing 70 points and giving up the worst defensive performance in at least modern NFL history, arguably ever. Yeah, I don't. That's just really rough. That's really rough spot to be. The other options out there, I actually have the list pulled up already because I was going to be like, hey, let's see who's there. Maybe there's someone who's intriguing. Micah Hyde, Tracy Walker, Jaron Curse, Adrian Phillips, Tashawn Gibson. That's it. And then it's just like some former draft busts like Keanu Neal or Justin Evans, Ryan Neal. It's rough. And I know a name like Micah Hyde or even Jaron Curse, Adrian Phillips, Tashawn Gibson, these names might be exciting to people because they recognize them. The youngest one of that group is 30 and a half years old. And he's the only one younger than 32. It's rough out there. Justin Simmons is one of the youngest players out there and by far the best. I think Joey's point is absolutely valid. This isn't a team looking to win at a high level right now. You can deal with having really poor safety depth for this season. Wins and losses aren't the biggest deal this season. That said, I don't know. With Justin Simmons still out there with his market probably greatly reduced, Quandre Diggs, who's a very talented safety, just signed for $5 million. Justin loves Denver. I would definitely consider bringing him back. It's not like he's a locker room problem or anything. If anything, he's a benefit to the locker room. And yeah, have some talent. Give your quarterback a little more defensive success so he's not constantly in a negative game script.
Zach, a great point when you bring up Quandre Diggs. The timing of all of this makes me question what the plans were and maybe what sped up either this decision, having even played a preseason game, have some questions about why this decision was made. And if there weren't feelers out for Diggs, what exactly is waiting in the wings? And there's a great chance that there aren't any free agent signings prior to the season starting to kind of capitalize on what Joey was saying, where maybe it's not that they necessarily feel resolved in what they have on the present roster, but also Cody Daly says, could we see Moss move to safety if Abrams strain keeps progressing? I think there's going to be a lot more position versatility where perhaps and perchance the safety depth is not of concern given how strong the CBs are looking. So defensive backs in general looking good. Cody Daly, thank you for your questions. And then Mundungus, Mike over at MHRT said, Bree, did you catch SummerSlam on Saturday? Sir, I did not. You're going to have to send me the cliff notes. So Joey, I knew you had something to say there.
I just was looking too. Zach, did you mention Tracy Walker? I know he didn't play great last season, if I'm not mistaken, but he is a player in the past I've seen play good for the Lions, and he's only been in the league for 5 years. Another guy that's had injury issues, if I'm not mistaken, as well. It's just like a younger type guy that I've seen play good football before, so maybe that's an option. I'm just throwing names out there. I know some are a fan of Key, the safety the Broncos currently have, and then Skinner, JL Skinner, obviously. I mean, who said it? D-Bronx said it in here. he pretty much I can't find the comment, but he mentioned it is like, what's the point? Just play the young guy, see what you have, because this isn't the year to win anyways. And that's pretty much sums up exactly my thoughts. Like, of course, winning would be amazing. That would be the best thing in the world if they could do that. But ultimately, I want everyone to keep in mind this season is a W or L based on how Bo Nix looks, really. Like, for real, that's how it is, because you're going to be a lot more flexible in the cap next year, and that's really when you're going to be able to build a roster that can compete if Bo Nix does look the part. It's a big, fat W of a season, regardless of their record, if Bo Nix looks competent enough to be the Broncos starting quarterback for the foreseeable future. So I might just play the young guys, see what I have there, and who knows, like, if Jale Skinner looks really great this season, that's somebody I have on a rookie contract, and I don't have to go out and pay a safety. Or if Riley Moss goes out and, hey, despite what I saw at training camp, who knows, right? It's training camp. I've seen training camp. Case Keenum threw no interceptions in training camp. So he looks all of a sudden really good in the regular season. And now I don't have to go out there and find a quarterback too next offseason. I could save money and spend that elsewhere. So, yeah, I might just lean towards playing the young guys too.
Yeah, I've said it. I feel a fair bit over like the last year of this show, as the Broncos are kind of in this dark period. But the one like upside to being a rebuilding team is you are kind of, and in the Broncos case, the dead cap is forcing them to do it. But you have to play a lot of young, cheap players. And a lot of those guys are going to not be good, but some of them will be. You are going to be forced to give opportunities that, the Eagles aren't necessarily giving players. And you'll be able to, as a result, find players that teams at the top aren't going to be able to find. So yeah, I think the most advantageous thing is probably go with a young safety. And I love the Riley Moss point there. I think I was talking with Hank or someone, it might have even been you, Joey. It all blurs together under that heat, man, when you're out there for long enough. But Riley Moss has been doing pretty solid in zone coverage. It's just when he's manned up with someone that he's kind of getting torched.
That makes perfect sense, Zach. That's his scouting report. You want him reading the football, not the wide receiver. You want him attacking at the football and reading the quarterback, not the wide receiver. He's just not great with his change of direction stuff. And we've seen quarterbacks like that succeed. Shout out Richard Sherman, right?
Yeah, and if you take, you'll take a lot of that rather off of his plate if you just move him to safety. And again, you're going to see a fair bit of 3 safety looks, I think, with this defense. That third safety is generally someone in a bit of a hybrid role. So having some cornerback experience might not hurt him. At this point, I'm going to be real. I don't think it's happening for him at quarterback or cornerback rather. I'm looking through my telescope and I do not see a starting corner. I think maybe he can figure it out at safety, but I'm not buying any Riley Moss corner hype.
No, I don't mean to deviate too much, but I just want to point out something. So I haven't been to all the training camps, so this is what I saw from Riley Moss. And it goes back to exactly what I saw at Iowa a little bit, which is what made it concerning, right? Because I looked at the film, I watched all of his games at Iowa, and now I'm finally seeing it on the field because we didn't really get to see the guy play much. And now I'm trying to see how he looks out there. And a lot of the issues I saw at Iowa, which I was telling you, is change of direction stuff, was on concern. Like the issue is like, and to be fair, a lot of people were hitting the ground that day. The Broncos practice field looks like it's in shitty shape because everybody was falling down a lot. But I think the person I saw on the ground the most was Riley Moss that day. Cortland Sutton hit a deep curl. Riley Moss falls right in front of him. Pass goes right to Cortland Sutton. Bree and I saw Greg Dulcich. It was a beautiful route, by the way. They put Dulcich, he was the sole wide receiver to the left side, and Dulcich really just beat him on a dig. It was a beautiful route. It was a really beautiful route, but it was in team period. It wasn't like it was one-on-ones, and Riley Moss again fell. Like I saw him hit the ground too much, which made me question his change of directions, and that's kind of why I point out and Zach pointed out in his thread the issues with Riley Moss and the we'll have to see it to believe it type attitude there.
Well, yeah, it makes you question how that would look in the NFL speed during games because we've yet to see that really play out. He was on special teams today out there at practice. It was shells, so it was in a slower speed than necessary. But he was in coverage against little Jordan Humphrey, where you do see that change in direction. What my hope is there is that he's quick enough downhill that any sort of ball hawking is in his near future, because I think that's where you're really going to see Riley Moss shine. I do want to change directions a little bit and maybe work on my juking ability as we move towards talking about Uwazurike returning to practice. The NFL has reinstated the defensive linemen. Guys, does this add complexity and answer maybe some key questions that you had about the defense entering into the season? I didn't see him out there, and like Zach already pointed out, it's because the sun was glaring into my eyeballs, and therefore I was unable to really take roll call adequately. It took me about half of practice to realize that Mike McGlinchey wasn't out there in all of his very tall glory. Joey, I'm going to throw this one over to you first and foremost. First, what do you think about the return? I don't think we necessarily have to talk too much about the trials and tribulations of the gambling rules within the NFL, but I think this is an important return for a questionable defensive line that has lost Mike Purcell. How do you guys feel about it?
Yeah, I think I mean, so he's a guy that has a ton of athleticism and a big size. He was an older rookie, as Zach pointed out. He was not a big Uwazurike fan. I remember very vividly Zach's thoughts on Uwazurike and him feeling pretty validated about those feelings after his rookie season. That's how I sum it up. Like, he does have potential, just because his just pure size and athleticism is pretty remarkable there. We just didn't get to see this rookie season. Okay, I'm looking for the sophomore season. Didn't get to play. So now another year older. To me, he's not a guy that I would for sure say is like, he has to make the roster. I don't think so. I think he might be better than some of the guys we saw last year. Like Elijah Garcia, I think there's a good chance Uwazurike could play better than Elijah Garcia did for the Broncos last year. But am I super hyped about it? No. I'm going to have to see it in the preseason. Again, while a lot of these returning Broncos have experience with Vance Joseph, this is going to be Uwazurike's first time playing with Vance Joseph. Like, there's a lot of things in front of him at this point to make it. He's really going to have to tear it up, in my opinion.
Yeah, and now there's potential. He's a very talented athlete, as Joey laid out. One of the knocks with Uwazurike was he was drafted at like 24, which is pretty old for, a like defensive lineman in the NFL draft. He's now 26. Zach Allen is 26 and is going into the second year of his second contract. And this is going to be the second year Uwazurike is playing football. And just, as you get older, I think developmental potential is a little lesser in the NFL, at least. So that is one element. Now, I fully agree with Joey. He can come in and he can make an impact here. You look at, I think the first wave, or the first four on that Broncos D line with Zach Allen, DJ Jones, John Franklin Myers, and Malcolm Roach is pretty promising. But after that, with Angelo Blackson, who is a journeyman, back end of defensive line rotation, good type guy, and then Matt Henningsen, who has been rosterable but hasn't made much of an impact.
I don't even know
by the team. Could he beat out one of those guys and be an upgrade and just provide a little more depth to that room? Absolutely. He's got a ways to go, though, no doubt.
Yeah, no, exciting nonetheless. I like having another player there that has a little potential and could possibly make the roster. It's exciting nonetheless. I don't want to make it seem like we're downplaying it, because, like we said, we think that he can make the final 53-man roster. That's definitely a possibility. I just don't know if it's a foregone conclusion like some are acting like.
Yeah, I think we need to do an early season prediction. I guess not early now that we're approaching the first preseason game of the season, but the final roster predictions should start coming down the pike this week. Training camp runs Tuesday through Thursday. They've canceled the public availability for Fridays, which is also Miles' birthday celebration. I feel like we've all been robbed in some capacity, but if you have questions for what you want us watching out there at camp, Zach and myself will be out there intermittently this week. I might have to skip tomorrow because if my my brain melts one more single time, there may not be a trio left for Let's Talk Broncos to cover the rest of the season. Did find a new viewer today out at camp, though. So if you're watching, thanks so much for your time today. And okay, guys, question for you. 4 more practices prior to the first game of the season out there in Indianapolis. What are you guys watching for or wanting to see in particular on the pursuit of this very first game? One, I must warn you, this feels incredibly fast and like the offseason just happened. So I'm sort of at odds with what I'm trying to anticipate here. I can tell you today that Bo Nix looked great. Zach Wilson is a fun individual to watch out there, and Jarrett Stidham is still calm, cool, collected, and simply consistent going out there. But I wouldn't say that particularly he performed better than Bo Nix today. Again, Shell's half speed, so I'll go ahead and have that conversation. And also my view from the hill could very well be messing with my eyesight as I'm standing right at the 50-yard line. So if you have questions about what you want to see there out at camp, drop it in the comments, drop it in this box. Or if you have questions about what we've seen this week, let us know. But again, back to my question. What do you guys think and anticipate is kind of the finishing touches for this week prior to the first game?
I mean, figuring out who's starting at quarterback. It seems like the center stuff is a little less unsettled. I even think like cornerback. It seems like Levi Wallace comfortably has the inside track there. I think the Broncos are seeing what Joey and I are seeing at the back end of that cornerback, or in that cornerback room outside Surtain, rather. So I think quarterback is really what I'm trying to think what other ones. I think back end of the receiver room is pretty up for grabs. I think that'll be one to watch, but we're going to get such insight into, I mean, when will the Bo Nix era start? I think as soon as Wednesday. They announced today that Wednesday they'll be announcing their starting lineup for that game. Once Bo Nix is named the starter of this team, they are not going back for at least the 2024 season. And for them to go back anytime in the next, 36 months, it would have to be pretty, or not 36 months, but like 18 months rather. It'd have to be a really, really bad draft pick. They are pretty pot committed to Bo Nix now. I think that could mean they still roll with Jarrett Stidham for a bit because they understand once they flip that switch, there's no going back. But it's hard to deny that. And I've only been there for a handful of these days, but I feel like we're on a week straight now of like positive Bo Nix reports for every single day of practice. Jarrett Stidham has had one full day with the starters in the last, 5-6 practices. It's starting to become like last week I was talking about how one-sided it was, in the favor of Stidham and Nix. Now Nix is starting to separate from Stidham in that herd. So it seems like sooner rather than later. I hope they can start consolidating the first team reps to Nix. So let's get this over with.
Yeah, I want to just add on to something. I feel like it hasn't been reported much, but from what I've seen, I don't think like Jarrett Stidham has been out there and been bad. Like I really don't think so at all. I think Jarrett Stidham has been, like Bree said, cool, calm, collected, and he's actually been pretty solid. He's made some throws out there that I've seen just in my 2 days going where it's like, wow, that came from Jarrett right there. Like that was a good throw. I feel very confident with Jarrett being my backup quarterback. And the only reason I feel like I have to point this out is because I understand the Bo hype. I walked away from practice feeling a lot more confident in Bo as well. I think Zach and I and Bree also were like kind of skeptical with Bo. I wasn't a big fan of Bo coming out of the draft, if I'm being honest with you. You go rewind to our draft show we had. Zach definitely wasn't that day. Like we've all been like a little worried about it. And going to practice, I've come away to different impression there, but with that comes, I think, some people being like, Bo's the guy, and then in trying to make that a conversation, crapping on Jarrett Stidham, and I think Jarrett Stidham's been cool. Like honestly, this has been one of the better quarterback rooms I've seen here in Broncos country, and it's not saying much. It's not saying much at all, but I've come away like, oh wow, these guys are actually kind of competent out here. This is
and
cool.
then you sprinkle a little Zach Wilson out there, and you're almost like, man, this is fun. You don't know what's coming on. Maybe if you stuck Zach Wilson out there for some, I mean, he slings the ball. He had one to Vele today where I was like, if that's not leaving a mark directly on his chest, I would be absolutely shocked. And what you pointed out there is, what's the long-term goal, right? You wouldn't be worried about Jarrett Stidham going in there. You would show competent football being played out there. But you're right. I think the Bo Nix question mark was, what was it going to look like? And I think as you watch through these installs, is that even when he does have a day in which there's rookie mistakes, which at the end of the day, although he's 24 years old, there's still rookie mistakes happening where maybe he's catching it there on the inside shoulder and it's just going to get picked off by a defender no matter how hard he tries. He comes back the next day and completely eliminates that worry. I think that shows that ceiling is pretty high. And moving forward, Zach, I think I agree with you. You can't pivot from whatever your decision is. And I think that's why it'll be drawn out through the preseason before we get to the regular season and finally deem that Bo Nix is that starter there. I don't see how you don't go in that direction when he's not looking like a marked disappointment out there. You're not questioning whether or not he can see the middle of the field. You're not wondering whether or not he's able to work through his progressions. I saw him look downfield, quite possibly thinking he was going to sail that over. I think it was either Troy Franklin or Cortland Sutton. And instead, he threw the ball in this perfect, like 15-yarder in midfield for a completion. So he's already being able to, one, establish that sort of not transcribing exactly what his next move is, but also the defense has been speaking in a way where they love his way of identifying the movement on their side. So I think he's just so poised and mature in that aspect where, yeah, it's hard not to buy into the hype, Joey. Every time I leave, I go, wow, that just looked that much more impressive. If you're looking at who's the better quarterback thus far, I think you have to go with Jarrett Stidham, just given his veteran prowess, all the experience that he has, and his ability to get that first down by all means necessary. And so the question is what do you want for the future of this team? And with the skill set that you have at wide receiver. So I think once that's isolated, you'll begin to see how the wide receiver and the running back groups break them down for you. But I will let you know today, guys, Marvin Mims, speedy, but Jaleel McLaughlin, even quicker. So that was fun to watch today. Obviously not in those heavy pads and able to turn the gears on since it's heavily focused on conditioning. The guys were running every single route into the end zone to the cheers and the excitement of the crowd. Zach, I think you had a point before I started rambling.
Oh, no, it was just silly. I love every time Zach Wilson's camp performances come up, you've described it as like fun or intriguing or like, which is great. And it is really accurate. It's like any talent competition, whether it be, this or like American Idol, needs like the one that's a bit of a train wreck for comic relief. And Zach Wilson is the guy doing the pants on the ground rap. It is so great.
I do have to say,
that's wild.
He's also had some of the best throws in camp. It's just all the way, all over the place. I do agree with you, Zach, but
it took one practice for him to not get any more first team reps. I mean,
Zach, we agree, but there's no. The dude was still the second pick of the draft at one point, and it's obvious. I think everyone there can see why, like with his arm talent and stuff like that, he just hasn't progressed at all. He hasn't turned into the guy that they thought they could coach him up into. He's had the best. He would have been sacked in a game, but damn, that was a good throw.
He did almost have an interception to LaVale Bailey where I said, okay, there it is. And then he almost had a touchdown for 25 yards. So let's talk about the comic relief button. Because Zach, I want to push the golden buzzer just simply on Zach Wilson because you're a hater.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine. I think, the pants on the ground guy had some best too. He had the best viral moment of maybe the entirety of American Idol. Like there's definitely some high water marks there as well. I think I'm calling it like I see it. I think if we were all hooked up to a lie detector test, I think we're getting similar reviews on Zach Wilson.
But the pants on the ground guy could also be Chris Jones. Anyway.
That was a deep cut joke.
If you know what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying. But I want to talk about what I'm looking forward to at training camp. And one thing that would make me, or at a preseason game, one thing that would make me absolutely just ecstatic one thing that would make me so happy is if I saw Jonas Griffith out there and he just tore it up.
Same.
That would get me jacked up. I would be so excited if I saw that. Okay, Cody Barton, I think he's going to be a good coverage type guy. I think he's a pretty bad every down linebacker. I really do. And if I'm just looking at ability, I think Griffith has the ability to do a little more than Cody Barton can. And I mean, no one's really talking about the inside linebacker group, but on paper, it doesn't look that great. So I would love to see Jonas Griffith go out there and just play really, really good.
Guys, I have to comment on that because every time I take notes out at camp, and I've been out there every day, it's just I can't tweet all day like Zach does. He's built different. He's like robot Terminators type training camp coverage. So look for look for Zach Seegers' coverage out there. You're not going to get it from me. But Jonas Griffith and his innate physical ability and just the terror that I feel like he can conduct there out on the field. It's apparent every single practice. But Joey, I also have questions about the linebackers because Thomas Incoom is a name that keeps popping up simply because he's got the stuff. So how does that room break itself down? You absolutely nailed it for me. That's what I want to see happen. That's what I want to see play out. And I can see Zach smirking over there because he's waiting and withering to be able to get a Alex Singleton take out there. So I'll let you have it, Seegers.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, honestly, Singleton's probably the best linebacker in this room, and it's troubling. But Jonas Griffith, I think, talking about guys with maybe some upside that you can tap into, I think Jonas Griffith is that guy. So I fully agree with Joey. This is a position group where, during our preview series, maybe the roughest position group on the entire team. I bet it's up there as one of the roughest position groups in the entire league. Jonas Griffith, I'd say the same thing for Lavelle Bailey. I know Bree said earlier he had an interception today. I think he's had some decent
close to.
Oh, close to, my bad. I think he's a little more fluid than Jonas Griffith. The one bad moment I did see from Jonas Griffith at camp was him trying to recover on a pass to Josh Reynolds where the angle just did not work out for him with kind of how he's a little bigger, a little more stiff. And Reynolds was able to just glide right by him for a big gain. But to Joey's point, that's what you have Cody Barton here for more. I would love to see Jonas Griffith break out. This team needs some young, talented pieces.
Yes, that would be that would get me really hyped. And I guess also if Riley Moss proved me wrong and he looked amazing. That would be the best thing of all time, too. These are the situations, guys. I do not care if I'm right or wrong on it. I have an opinion. I do my research. I look at it. I think I'm pretty good at watching the film, especially out of the draft. I think I have a good beat on some of these guys. And it would make me so happy if I were wrong at cornerback, too. And the Broncos didn't have to pay a very high-priced position in cornerback to fit next to Patrick Surtain in the future.
I'm sorry, Joe. Does that mean you're standing on business?
Does that mean I'm standing on business? I mean, I indeed, I guess.
Indubitably.
I'm sorry. I know we're going to get out of here really quick here. The last thing I'm excited for, there were two injury things I was really rooting for this year. One was Caden Sterns that, actually, I guess there's three now that I think about it. I was overlooking Tim Patrick, but there's three. The Caden Sterns one hasn't gone as I hoped. Please, Javonte Williams. I was just gonna. Oh man, he really had to go. Okay. Sorry, Javonte. Or sorry, Joey. I want to see Javonte Williams look good. I can't get it out of my head that one practice we were at where it was minor contact, but it was a real hit, and he just ran right through it. And I can't get that out of my head. I want that so bad in real games. Rookie Javonte Williams is one of my favorite Broncos I've ever seen ever. I want more of that. That injury is one of my saddest moments ever, covering or following this team. I'm rooting so hard for it. That would, if he runs through some poor Colts linebacker, I will be beaming ear to ear.
TBD 007 says me during when a meeting goes overtime, just leaves. Basically Joey said, not anymore today. You've gotten my thoughts out. Zach, I think it's completely valuable to have that stance on a Javonte Williams injury, considering how heartbreaking it was, but also wanting to see that resurgence, right? The trajectory was absolutely insane. You don't want it to be a moment in which it's a what could have been a what if moment. Joey, thank you for coming back after I texted you. Please don't leave. I promise I won't say that again. But the idea with Javonte is out there is that this is the type of running back room where you want these guys running through the opposition. You aren't necessarily looking for them to have the extended vision, but that's something that Javonte Williams has worked on. And I'm hoping that with a season under his belt and the ability to rehab and take a break this offseason, it bodes well for that exponential growth that we've all been looking for. It is a wild conversation to have when it was the fun narrative to talk about whether or not Javonte Williams would even make this team. I would venture to say that that's not going to be an issue. Joey Richards.
I have a question for both you guys here. What does P. Ryan have to show, or can he even show anything to make this team?
Joey, I thought it was being a good teammate. And if that was the only thing that necessitated a roster spot, he'd be 1,000% in. P. Ryan's a cool dude. He's also a tremendous teammate. I saw him out there helping one of the offensive linemen finish out his end of practice cardio. But I don't know if it all just lies on whether or not the Broncos want to carry a fourth running back. And then you have the questions with Watson, and then you have whether or not Burton gets shoot in. Like these gentlemen are feasting off of each other's plates. And I don't know if P. Ryan offers something outside of what Estime has been offering, which is good hands. And I think that he showcased that today. I believe Zach Wilson had the throw to him, in which it really kind of begs the question of whether or not it's redundancy there. I don't want anybody to go anywhere. I like P. Ryan. I like what he offered last year, but he's no longer the crutch for the offense and what they were trying to run last season. And I think they're going to be leaning away from that. So I don't know if there's anything he could do to change his standing because he's already done so much. Zach.
Yeah, and Javonte's a good pass catcher. Like I think they would rather those dump offs be going to Javonte, be going to Jaleel, be going to Estime, someone who might be able to create a little more after the catch than what P. Ryan was able to do. I think, and Breeze, like dead on, he offers, I think, very little that the rest of this running back room doesn't. It's near impossible for me to imagine him making this roster. I think the one avenue for him doing it would have more to do with what the other guys show than him. I think if Estime is out there and whiffs bad on like a pass protection rep and allows Colts fill in the blank edge rusher or linebacker or whatever to go right up the gut and get a free shot on Zach Wilson and just clean his clock, like that's the kind of thing that I think scares a head coach and goes, okay, we've got to protect our franchise investment. We already have pass protection questions about Jaleel. I don't want to be in this situation where the only guy we trust to pass protect is this guy with a knee injury. Samaje Perine's a fantastic pass protector. Let's just use extra spot on that. I think that is the window for him. And it's a small one, but I think it could happen.
Joey, I think you convinced me. I believe it was you who was saying not too long ago that depending on how much we see of P. Ryan in the preseason will let us know exactly as an indication as to where the Broncos are going to go with that running back room. If he's highlighted a lot, I foresee him getting an opportunity elsewhere, which I would just love to see him succeed wherever he does go, because I think he does have a lot of really tremendous traits, but it's not a bad problem to have when you have a lot of promising potential there out at running back, especially when it's never really fallen into place the last couple of seasons. So not a bad problem to have. Yeah. I like P. Ryan. Great question. Anything else that you guys wanted to hit on?
I want to just add on to that real quick. I think I don't see why P. Ryan isn't a guy that a team would like trade for. Like seriously, while there is some redundancy in the Broncos running back room, Bree, you mentioned the hands. Zach, you mentioned the blocking. I think that he's the best blocker on this, and I think it's like Javonte is awesome at it, but I still think it's by like a sizable margin just because that's how good P. Ryan is as a blocker. And then everyone kind of forgets, like, yeah, he was like a top 5 running back in receiving yards last year. I think even higher than that, if I'm not mistaken. I think he was like top 2, top 3. It was like crazy high in receiving yards last year. The issue all comes down to when I hand him the ball, not a lot happens. That's kind of where the issue comes from. And it's because I need somebody to be able to carry the ball when I don't know exactly what I'm getting from Javonte. That's the reason P. Ryan's looking from the inside looking out, or from the outside looking in right now, is because of Javonte's situation, in my opinion. Whereas with Estime, I think there's so much more potential. Like, you can offer a little of P. Ryan in the blocking category, but I can hand him the rock, and he's going to be really good there. That's the insurance you need, because otherwise, I mean, McLaughlin's an awesome running back. I love him. I just don't want people to get too excited and think he should be playing a different role than what he's doing. Guys, he's a damn good role player. Let him be a damn good role player. Don't make him a bad every down back. Let him be that damn good role player that plays in these situations where he thrives. The moment you want him to step up and block a inside linebacker blitzing in the A gap, it's not going to look pretty. It's not. Like Darren Sproles was a phenomenal player in the NFL playing a role. I could go down the list of running backs that are like that, and I think that's kind of McLaughlin's thing there.
Yeah, I fully agree. You mentioned the receiving thing. It's nuts how effective he was as a receiver last year. In terms of yards per route run, the only player, he was number 1 among all running backs, so like ahead of Christian McCaffrey. And he's ahead of, or the only players ahead of him are Tyreek Hill, Nico Collins, Justin Jefferson, Puka Nacua, CeeDee Lamb, Ayuk, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Waddle, AJ Brown, Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, DJ Moore, Debo Samuel, Tank Dell, Amari Cooper, and Rashee Rice. There's 16 dudes. That's it. And it's like 16 of the best receivers in the sport. It's in like high octane explosive offenses like Miami's or Detroit's. It's so silly to me how
it is silly.
The dump off king was so productive.
But that's kind of like, I guess, why I mentioned it as a crutch to start the conversation. Is Jacob Romano seems to be in agreement here. I think P. Ryan's receiving production was more of a rust stat than P. Ryan having some elite receiving skill set. Jacob, good to see you. Jacob Romano, LTB contributor. Go see us over on letstalkbroncos.com. Joey, thank you for the parrot in the room bit. Never gets old. Just kidding.
Never gets old. Just kidding.
Dante wants to know how old Zach is. Zach, can you also give your blood type, your mother's maiden name, and the street address in which you grew up on, if you don't mind Dante asking?
Guys, 710.
710 would be wild. Where were you born?
That's all AI needs, Zach. We're going to figure that out. This is a bad decision.
It's over for you. All right, gentlemen. We'll be back on Wednesday. Zach, as you already let the people know, we'll find out who's going to be starting for Sunday's game against the Colts. That'll be a fun breakdown. I will most likely be at camp on Wednesday, I think. I don't know. Haven't decided. If you have questions for us for another episode of Let's Talk Broncos, we'll be sure to highlight your questions next time if you ask them in the comment section below. So hurry right now, leave a comment, ask us a question, or simply wish Zach Seegers a happy birthday right now. Like it would just be so nice for him to wake up to a bunch of notifications that he actually has to respond to. So we will see you again on another episode. I don't know why my hands are so busy today, but it feels like really apropos to be very robotic and saluting away. Anyways, we'll be back. We'll also have a special Friday-ish, Saturday-ish breakdown for you, but we're going to have our first bold predictions for the season, guys. Get ready and make sure they're bold. Don't screw this up. Zach.
I'm going to totally screw up. No, we'll bring it up later. I have a bold prediction that ties in with Samaje Perine. We'll bring it up during that show. People watch that one.
Definitely bring the bold prediction up during the bold prediction show. We're out of here. Have a great night. Happy birthday, Zach.
Happy birthday.